Okay, we're ready to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. So, just FYI, for some reason, about 2 weeks ago, all the videos that I have been saving all disappeared, and this morning I found them in a different location. Have no idea why, but it was a very strange experience. But anyway, they're back. I'll be able to post our videos back on YouTube again. So anyway, that's my tale of woe. I'm sticking to it. So as always, when we get started, we always like to introduce some new people who are joining us this morning. So, oops, that didn't sound good. So Michelle Higgins, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here today. I am the Associate Director for the Office of Societal Impact at the U of A. And predominantly what I do is help faculty who are applying for federal funding articulate, plan for, and measure the impact of their research on the community or in society. Um, so I really enjoy doing that. Part of what I do too is, well, a lot of the plans involve workforce development, training, and also making sure that people do have access to reliable internet, making sure that they have the technology that they need. So that's kind of why I'm here today. But thank you.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. It's good to see you again. Those of you who were maybe here a little earlier, Michelle and I go back some 20 years or so. So anyway, it's good to see you, Michelle. So let's see who else we got. Who else? We had a couple of other people this morning that who else do we have here today?
I can go. My name's Sarah Jane.
Oh,
I
there you
am
go, Sarah
the
Jane.
Business Development and Engagement Manager at PCC. I've been in that role for about 4 days. I was at PCC. I've been there 3 years, but just recently got this position. So my goal is to connect business and industry with contract training and upskilling training and improve student engagement and such. So thank you, and it's nice to be here.
Welcome. Great. And Larissa, even though you've been here before, but it was interesting to have that conversation with you before we started. So you want to just tell people quickly who you are? And then I have been talking with your folks about having you guys actually do a more detailed presentation for us.
Okay, my name is Larissa Organist. I'm the digital navigator at Copa Health. And what I do is I help our members be able to access the technology that they need, be able to access phones or tablets, be able to have access to good internet in their own homes. And then I work with them so that they become more comfortable with the technology that they have so that they're able to have better lives and be able to do more.
Can you just tell people just quickly again about what your organization is generally?
Okay, Copa Health, we are an organization that that is healthcare for people, and we do a great deal with mental health, but we do also have primary care physicians. The majority, I think pretty much all of our people come either from Mercy Care or from Access. So, we work with people who have some, real serious needs, and we try and help them be able to bring their lives up to where they want it to be and be able to be very involved in society and have good lives.
Great. Thank you, Larissa. And Lucy, I haven't seen you in a long time.
I
Say
know,
hi.
it's good to see you, everybody.
Want to just tell people who you are again, please?
We are a Tucson-based startup that is based in Pennsylvania and Arizona. We are called the My Healthy Globe Incorporated does business as the Force for Health Network. So we're trying to gamify the concept of healthy citizenship by offering a free virtual health academy, wellness tools, apps, and this whole gamification concept called the Reality Health Games. So I'm here to represent Tucson's team, so anybody that's interested in getting involved. And I'm also representing my Healthy Arizona team. So I've been working with Steve for many years.
Great. Thank you. And so I think, did I miss anybody who's new this morning? Doesn't sound like it. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. I kept adding people to our agenda this morning, so we do have a lot of things as always to cover today. So our agenda this morning is going to be, of course, our updates from the Broadband Office, Department of Ed, and the State Library. And then we're going to hear from Kelly Kersey on what's happening now with BEAD and the status of the BEAD project. And then we're going to hear from Kelly McCurgy about the AZ1 and the mapping that they're doing. And then Randy, how do you pronounce your last name? Looney?
Like the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Leaning, okay. And he's going to talk about the broadband toolkit that he works with. So that's kind of our agenda today. And so with that, let's just go ahead and get started. Aaron, you want to kick it off with a brief update with the Broadband Office, and then we'll get to Kelly in just a couple minutes.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Steve. Good morning, everyone. My name is Erin Larandos. I'm the Digital Equity Program Manager. I get to work with Kelly and the other folks in the State Broadband Office, but specifically on the digital equity side of things. Not a ton to update today, just reminders, especially since we've got a few new people joining us. We have posted the requirements for our subgrants within the digital equity program. This is our major way of implementing our plan because we do have so many amazing organizations across the state that are already doing this work. And we hope that they see their work and the goals that we established. And so here is a link to the digital equity page within the Broadband Office's website, which is going to be your one-stop shop for all of that information.
Did you want to share?
No, I just dropped the link. It's fine. Unless you'd like me to, I can.
It's up to you. If you want to, I'll stop sharing.
It's okay. It's fine. I just give links. It's all good. On that page, you can click through tabs to get to the current approved version of the digital equity plan. This is approved by NTIA back in April of last year. So we're coming up on its first birthday almost. And that really guides the subgrants because, again, the goals and objectives that we've laid out in the plan are what we hope to get applications to help us reach. We did host a roundtable discussion earlier this month that went through the requirements for the subgrant application and that process. And questions that were answered during that session were tracked and answered verbally during the presentation, but also in a frequently asked questions that's added now to the page for the March Community Roundtable conversation. Here's a direct link to that so you can see a recording of that whole presentation and then also a link to those frequently asked questions. We're going to do that again on April 8th. You can register for that on the Community Conversations tab on the first link that I dropped. The slides and the content will be the same between the two, but of course, we'll continue to answer any questions that folks have. Since we have posted that information, we're now kind of in this zone where everything has to be, an open meeting and all publicly available. And so if you do have any questions that you can't answer through the information that's on the website, I encourage you to come to that April 8th meeting so that we can go through it together. And if there's any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. Of course, I'm always available. I'll put my email in the chat here momentarily. Unless there's any questions, that's all I've got. I'm going to save the rest of the fun for Kelly.
Okay. So I don't know, Aaron, or maybe Kelly, you want to remind people that we will have a new broadband manager coming on board the end of the month. But you want to talk about that before you give us more of an update?
Sure, we could definitely do that. So that news, in case you haven't seen it, is the previous broadband director, Sandeep Bhowmick, has moved on to other exciting adventures. And so on the 31st of this month, just a couple weeks now, we will have a new broadband director. It's Nick Capozzi. He's coming to us from the governor's office and is well versed in all of the programs because we've worked really closely with the governor's office throughout this whole process. So it's almost like he, won't even have to have an orientation. He'll know everything already. So yeah, so that's there's a press release shared about a week ago now on that, which I can share that in the chat here momentarily as well.
Sounds good. And I did include the announcement in my newsletter. Speaking of my newsletter, again, just to remind you that I try to capture most of the things I do share or chat with everybody and the videos of the meeting and all that sort of stuff. So just a reminder that all of that information is generally in the email that I send out with our newsletter. But occasionally I miss stuff, but just encourage you to remember that that's where a lot of the links are, a lot of announcements are, and so forth. So anyway, moving on. So actually, Kelly, are you in a hurry to leave? Or are you going to be here for a while?
I need to jump off probably about 8:45.
Okay, well then
So I've got time.
I was going to wait until a little later, but let's go ahead and just start with you and kind of give us an update on what's happening with BEAD these days.
Sure. Well, thank you for that. Can I share my screen? Is that okay?
You sure can.
All right. I just sent a request to be able to share. So good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly Crucy. I am the Community Engagement Manager for the State Broadband Office. And today I get to share details about round one application. And you can tell I am talking and trying to share my screen at the same time. Please bear with me. Okay, could somebody give me a thumbs up or just let me know if they see my screen? You see the Connect All Arizona newsletter. Do you see that? Okay, yes, thank you. Appreciate the validation. All right, so on Tuesday of this week, we sent out an email, and then also Wednesday. It was the same email, but I just want to make sure that everybody received it. We have a few different contact pools, and we want to make sure everybody's getting our information. So the initial went out on Tuesday morning, and it was our newsletter with the updates, and then I resent that on Wednesday morning as well. If you did not receive this and you would like to, please put your email into the chat so that I can capture your information, your name, where you work, and your email. That'd be very helpful, and I can add that to our contact lists. So this email went out, and again, highlighting our new state broadband director, Nick Capozzi, as Aaron spoke about. And then our updates on the application. So the round one of applications closed on March 7th. So that was, almost 2 weeks ago now. And so what is happening? Here's kind of a recap and what we're able to share from this. So we'll go over some of the numbers and then some of the next steps. So it went really well. It opened on January 6th. That round one closed on March 7th. We received 147 applications from 21 different ISPs, internet service providers. And we have 67 project areas in the state. And of those project areas, we received applications that covered 65% of the 67 project areas. So again, we do have 2 rounds of this. So what happens now is we go through evaluations. So we are pooling all of those applications, putting it together, mapping it out. And when I say we, I am not a part of that process. Let me just be clear. So we are in active procurement and we are following, active procurement guidelines. So I am the public face, for better or for worse, of the office at this point, and I am not a part of the evaluation and assessment process. So we are trying to keep very clear borders as far as people who are a part of that evaluation team are not speaking directly with the public or applicants.
So that team is now starting to look at this information, go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and there is the evaluation process. So going through evaluating, assessing those applications, and then after that, they'll go into negotiations. So this is a long process. And so looking again through everything that we received through round one, and the goal here is look at what we received in round one. Then we will also have to go back to the maps and prepare those for round two of the application process, so that in round two, applicants are then applying for anything that was missed in round one. So that round two application process will start June 3rd. And in between then is when all the work is going on with the evaluation committee and also doing that negotiation with the applicants. So applicants who are submitted an application that the committee is interested in will be contacted by the committee to go through and start negotiating on that application for those areas that they proposed. I can see some things coming in the chat. So I'll go through this and we'll go through questions at that point. So again, round two will be June 3rd through July 3rd. It's a 30-day window for round two. And round two is then also mixed technology. So round one was really focusing on fiber. Round two will open it up for alternative technology as well. And again, the goal here is we are still focused on fiber. We know there's a lot of conversation happening with the administration about being tech neutral, and we have received no guidance. So everything is business as usual. We are going forward with the plan as it is until we hear otherwise. So everything is business as usual. And then as far as the public notice and when everyone will find out what the outcomes are, that's a detailed process. So as we all know, the NOFO is very explicit and detailed in what we can and cannot do throughout all of this. The awardee outcomes will officially be announced with our final proposal, and that will be, we are hoping, in October. So the NTIA has to approve, they get a 2-week time to approve the selections that were made from the application process. They have 2 weeks to review that, and we're thinking that that's going to be in October, and after that has been reviewed and approved, then we can go public with what those selections are. And our timeline at this point is all pending, because initially our final proposal was due August 1st, and we are going to submit an extension, and we can't apply for that extension until June 1st. So we have been working with NTIA on our timeline as it is right now, and I just need everyone to know that that is pending official approval, and we can't even apply for that approval until June. So everything is pending, but we are working closely with NTIA on these deadlines and on our timeline and what we have planned here, trying to make sure that we are crossing all the I's, dotting all the T's. So those are the updates there. I can see that there are some emails in here, but let me go through and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, Rory had a question and comment. Rory, you want to share your question and comment?
Yeah, so if you guys had said that there was an average cost or a cap cost per home in an area, has that been defined?
Not publicly, no. And yeah, as far as what I know, it is certainly not public. And I'm not sure, I'm sure that is something that for applicants and in the negotiation process would come out. But I don't have many details on that, but I do know that it is not public at this point.
Okay, and so if an area is, if you can't get an area negotiated down to that level, what happens to that bid?
Good question. So I think, again, through all the negotiations, the goal is to find, a resolution, to get to a number. And that's where, if I am not on the evaluation committee, so I shouldn't even speculate here, but my understanding is that if the fiber isn't going to work, the cost is too high, then they're moving on to other alternative technologies. And the goal here is to provide, again, most reliable service at a cost that works for everyone, and that is permissible by NTIA.
Okay, so with the new administration, one of the things that was mentioned is that satellite was going to be prioritized. It was going to be the second tier priority over fiber. Is that a state decision, or is that going to be an NTIA decision? Because, you know, that moves fixed wireless from second down the list down to third.
Right. And at this point, we are not making any changes in our operations until we are given specific guidance. So no guidance has come out yet to say, you know, right now that is being talked about, but nothing has come out officially to say that this is what is happening. We need to make changes to initial proposal, volumes 1, volume 2, changing our guidelines. So
Okay.
at this point, we are staying the course.
Okay. I'm sorry. If somebody else has a question, interrupt me. But my next question would be: the state has a budget of $900 something billion, or $9 million, excuse me. If the areas that are covered by fiber, the ones that you negotiate down, will they use up all of that funding so that there isn't a second round? Or is there a mandate to set aside some of that funding for the rest of the 35% areas that are not covered?
I don't know that there's a mandate to set aside funding, but the goal is all project areas, every home. So we can't use all the money in round 1. We've got to serve every home within the state. So areas that are not covered in round 1 will be moved to round 2. And the priority and the goal here is serving all homes.
So how are you going to know how much money to set aside for round 2 that instead of using it in round 1?
Yeah, Rory, I think we're getting into things that I'm not able to speak on.
Okay.
Yeah, so too deep in the weeds here, and I'm unfortunately not able to provide answers on that. I can stay up higher and say that, you know, the goal here is our focus, all homes in the state through round 1 and round 2.
Okay, so somebody will attempt to make an estimate of what it will cost to complete 100% of the areas, and then balance that out against what money being spent in round 1 then, or allocated. Would that be a correct statement?
I think so, yes.
Okay, good enough. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions for Kelly? Going once, going twice.
Mark, Kelly, I think
Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
I saw in the newsletter that ACA has hired a new native liaison. I'm not sure of the title. Do you want to mention that?
Yes, thank you. That is Okasana Beatty. She comes to us from the Arizona Department of Education. She's our new tribal liaison, and she is doing great work. Our goal continues to be working with all tribes and counties throughout the state. And through this process, if tribes are applying and want to receive funding or be a part of the BEAD process, in the end, with our final proposal, we have to have consent from every tribe. We need official written consent from the tribal council, the tribal government. So she is working right now to reach out to all 22 tribes to let them know that we're going to need this in October to submit to the federal government. That is an NTIA requirement. And that's to ensure that tribes are aware this is happening and that they approve of this implementation on their land. So that is Okasana. And I don't know if Okasana has attended one of these, but we could certainly invite her. And then I can also see in the chat, Mala put in Evan Feynman's email. So he left NTIA and did send out an email to colleagues with his thoughts. So, and I think that was in the broadband breakfast email. I know Steve gets that. Okay.
Yeah, I just had a question for Kelly. It says that you got applications for 162,000 unserved and underserved locations. So does that mean that there's about 18,000 that were not covered, that you did not receive applications for?
Correct. So there's a number of BSLs that are not included in this first round. So again, as we're going through and looking at round 2 is now focusing on everything that was not picked up in round 1. Right. Whether it was fiber or alternative technology. So that round 2 is going to be all about whatever was not applied for in round 1.
But there were about 17 or 18,000 that were not.
Yeah, because I think we're at about 180,000 BSLs, give or take. Yeah.
When will that list be posted, Kelly?
Which list? Like what BSLs or?
The areas that we're not bid on.
I think, oh, so that will be a part of the round 2 application. So I don't think that that will be public, but that will be available to applicants.
Right, but when
So-
will it be available?
That will be, I think, available in everything after it's all said and done in the final proposal and public comment period, which I think is coming in October.
Okay, maybe, I'm not sure I get, I'm asking, you've got all these areas bid. When is the list of the areas bid going to be listed, and the unserved areas be listed so we can start looking at those?
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's 2 ways. For the public, that would be in October with the final proposal. So before we submit that final proposal, it goes out for public comment. And so this is what the public can see and what specific areas are bid on and who the awardees are is listed in that. As far as what
I think he's asking about round 2, when
right.
Yeah.
So round 2, that will be available to applicants. So anybody who is applying, and they can see that information in the portal. So if you are an internet service provider or an eligible applicant, you would see that in the portal through round 2.
Okay, so it won't be posted until round 2 is actually posted.
Correct.
It would be advantageous for those areas to be available earlier so that engineering can start on those areas instead of making it a last minute rush. So is there a way that can be evaluated as a better decision? I mean, to try to get that information out earlier.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And
because you're saying round 2 is a 30-day window. That's, in terms of engineering, anything that's pushing
right.
it,
Right. Yeah. So let me take that back and ask. And then I can follow up with Steve and with you, Rory, on that, but definitely with Steve so he has details that can be shared out.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Good question.
Thanks. Other questions for Kelly? Going once, going twice. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate you being here. A couple of quick things before we move on with our next presenters. First of all, I apologize to all of you. You probably got inundated with emails from me. The past few days, I've had to make some major changes to my email and ran into some technical issues. And so hopefully that's all taken care of and I won't bombard you with emails again. And so the next thing is in a change to the agenda. John Kelly, I see you're online. And I don't know if you can hang around or not. So do you want to give us a quickie update on what's happening here in Arizona?
Yeah, I'm just totally, thank you, Steve. John Kelly with Tri-Advocates, lobbyist, old guy. Just trying to keep track of what's going on with the Arizona legislature. And I can't say that there's a huge amount of focus or attention on broadband. It's more on energy supply and baseball stadiums and things like that. But I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything. But I'm just commuting to work, trying to listen in. And thanks to Kelly and Aaron for their updates on ACA.
John, a question about the bill to move the broadband office to ADOA from Commerce. Is that I think passed the Senate? Is that going anywhere?
I haven't seen it on an agenda. We're going to see all the rest of the agendas for next week, probably by the end of today. And I talked to a couple of the different legislative liaisons for agencies. I don't sense that there's any huge momentum behind that. As I've said previously, the testimony for that came from a very well-regarded, very, very well-educated, sophisticated person in Payson. And he had a pretty interesting approach, thinking that broadband was really more about emergency services than economic development. And since emergency networking is all handled by DOA through the 911 system, that was an interesting take. But I can't say that there's been a compelling argument made that the disruption to move broadband from ACA to ADOA is worth whatever benefit there would be. And I know that ACA and DOA collaborate very closely on things that cross over. So I don't sense a lot of momentum, but I'll report out when I get a sense of the agenda for the week
Thank you.
to come.
Okay, thanks, John. Always good. I have to call John every once in a while and give him grief for not being here. So I guess the guilt got to you, huh, John?
I'm guilt ridden here in every respect, Steve. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on. So so let me turn it over to Kelly McCurgy and let her talk to you quickly about AZ1 and in particular the mapping uh, segment of what the work she's doing. So Kelly, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Kelly Mukherjee from ASU's Enterprise Technology. I support the ASU's Chief Information Officer, Lev Gonick, in our work around broadband and digital inclusion. AZ1 is a web portal that was first spun out of a partnership with Maricopa County. So in 2022, Arizona State University won an award. These are federal dollars to help Maricopa County with 6 different statements of work, one of which includes mapping, broadband mapping, which I have the pleasure of working on. So we created this web portal called AZ1. It is a portal of resources. So if you're not familiar with it, if you'd like your if you have your resources that you'd like to share out of here, this portal is meant to be comprehensive of all the wonderful resources in Arizona. So please feel free to contact me. I'll put my contact information again after I present and share this with you. One of the main features on AZ1 is our broadband map. We first started out with a Maricopa County broadband map, and it was positively received. And so Maricopa County generously allowed us to open it up for all of Arizona so everybody could see this similar information. So what I wanted to just quickly present today, I won't go into much detail. I'm actually presenting next week at the Arizona Digital Inclusion Network meeting on Thursday afternoon. Perhaps I can share some information of how to get to that meeting if you'd like a deeper dive. But really quickly, if you come over here to Broadband Maps and click on Arizona Broadband Map, you'll be able to come here to an interactive map where you'll see multiple layers of information. Most of these layers are publicly available, although we also have some purchase data sets in here. Once again, this is a free resource for all of you on this call, everyone in Arizona, to come and take a look. We have demographic information, covered populations, community anchor institutions by approved BEAD eligibility. So really all you have to do is click on that layer. I encourage you to open up the carrots and maybe take a look. And, this is how you'll be able to turn on and off different layers of information that pertain to you. And let's see, what I'm showing right now happens to be the broadband serviceable locations that we were talking about earlier with Kelly Crucy. She was explaining the BEAD program. Well, some of these data sets pertain exactly to that. So here we allow you to see the total BSLs that are BEAD eligible and then the percent. Once again, you can click on and off depending on which view you'd like to see. And then we also have BEAD project areas that you can also turn on if you'd like. So really, we have multiple ways for you to slice and dice different pieces of information. If it gets overwhelming and you need some help, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to meet with you and maybe talk through what you're trying to do. But a lot of people have been coming to use our maps to help justify the need for more funding and the need to help in different areas. So depending on what you're trying to do, the maps may be helpful for you. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I think that's where I'll end it today, Steve.
Okay, thanks, thanks, Kelly. Any questions for Kelly before we move on?
Hey, Steve.
Yes, Frank.
This is Frank Martinez. Hey, Kelly and Aaron, I'm curious. So you've got the FCC National Broadband Map, you've got the as one map, and then on the ACA website, there's that map. Can you help me kind of compare, contrast which one to go to for? I'm trying to find what the authority is. And then I know that you're pulling data probably from the census website and embedding that into those layers that you're showing. Uh, can you give me some perspective on that?
So Frank,
Absolutely.
excuse me a second before Kelly, before you go on. Frank, you want to just tell people who you are?
I'm still trying to figure that out, Steve.
Okay.
Frank Martinez, I work with Connected Nation, and we work in multiple areas upstream. We don't do downstream deployments, but we do a lot of things with respect to grants administration, broadband planning, policy, um, policy related work. And we also do some things with middle mile IXPs and also a lot with broadband mapping. That's why I asked the question of Kelly.
Okay, Frank, great question. Luckily, we work very close with the ACA, State Broadband Office. We have started a mapping coalition with other broadband mapping partners across the state, so we are aware. And if any of you are actually working on broadband mapping, please let me know. We'd love to include you. But for now, I know of the State Broadband Office having their maps, Pima County having their broadband maps, and then we have our maps as well. So Frank, we were worried that people would get confused over maps, so we have been working closely together to understand the differences and not to step on each other's toes and try not to create confusion for the public. So ACA's maps are very much focused on BEAD, and so BEAD, for all things BEAD related, we do advise that you go use the ACA's maps for that purpose. The As One maps include digital inclusion, and we've included some portions of BEAD, but grabbing the data from the same sources as the ACA. So it could help just tell a different story because we're showing you demographic information that you can overlay with the BEAD data as well. So it really depends on what you're looking for and what kind of story you're trying to tell. The data might be able to help you with that. And so does that help answer your question? Please go to the
Well,
BEAD
yeah.
map.
So for BEAD, I get that, but there's more than BEAD, right? There are other programs. And when you start dealing with different funding sources from federal or state, and then, with BEAD, there's this thing where they have to, ensure that there's no duplication of funding. And so if you're trying to assess that, that's where things get kind of fuzzy. And so I think that, trying to find where the authority is that has the most recent current data so that we're not referencing old data or looking at different maps. I'm trying to, get a better understanding of that. And I know that you had mentioned earlier at the beginning when you were speaking that it started in Maricopa County and you started to connect with other counties, but since I come from up northeast near Four Corners, I'm looking at Apache County, Navajo County, those areas and trying to understand, are they involved? Are they engaged? Which maps in that sense? So, with all the different counties in the state.
I'm open to meeting everyone across the state. So I also need help connecting with people. So if you know of anybody that I should be working with, please make a warm introduction. Happy to talk to more people in Navajo and Apache areas to talk about mapping and to even check through the data. And if there are more data sources that we're not aware of, we're happy to check them out and see if they belong on the As One maps. This is an iterative process, and we're constantly trying to find the best data sources. We update them as soon as they change. We try to keep everything up to date. So happy to dive deeper into it, Frank, with you if you'd like to take this offline.
Yeah, let's do that for sure. And just one last question, tribal lands.
Mm-hmm.
Are you mapping tribal lands and which one is the most current for tribal lands?
So, like you said, we take information that's publicly sourced. So, FCC, the census data, we have purchased UCLA data. I've been trying to find out, actually, it's a good question. I've been wanting to work with tribal nations more around data sovereignty, as I know that that's very important. It's an area that I'm not that familiar with, but I really want to work on creating respect around that data and what we show. So, Frank, if you have any contacts for me to work with, I would love to. Our whole mapping coalition actually is very interested around data sovereignty and helping to be respectful of tribal data. So, happy to work with someone on continuing to move in that direction.
So right now it's publicly available information. If it's related to BEAD, ACA website, and then the effort you're doing is an evolving, growing space that over time will become more enhanced with your partnerships across the state. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So FYI, Frank, to you and Kelly in particular, next week, Tracy Morris, who is the executive director of, I'm not sure if they've changed their name. I know they've expanded some, executive director of the American Indian Policy Institute. I believe that's the current name, based at ASU, is going to be presenting. So just FYI, those of you who are interested in what's happening in the American Indian community, particularly here in Arizona, next week would be a good time to attend that meeting.
Which event is that, Steve?
It's our meeting next week.
Oh, here. Okay, got it.
Yep.
Okay.
It will be here next week. So, Aaron, did you have something you wanted to share or talk about?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I was actually going to echo that for Kelly. Obviously, Tracy at ASU is probably your best, you know. Also, of course, there's as you learned, you know, we have our tribal liaison, and then ASU also has our old tribal liaison. You know, more around the, you know, student engagement piece, but yeah, those resources. I just wanted to also add, Frank, for you know, the question that you asked around the DE pieces on the maps. You know, at the time of writing our plan, we were encouraged, you know, to use the population viewer. It's basically like an aggregate version of the census information that focused on covered populations and device access and internet access and all that kind of thing. So if you look back through our plan, you'll see links to that. Over the last couple of months, that platform hasn't always been available. So I just wanted to bring that into the conversation as well as we look at these publicly available data sets, and especially ones that have various levels of government oversight and control. Just be aware of that. And that's all I'll say there.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about all of that stuff? If not, let's move on. Before we get to Randy's presentation this morning, Sharika, you want to share again your event and that you're looking for folks to come meet with young people? Sharika, are you still there? I take that to be a no. Okay, so moving on. So I want to introduce Randy Leaning. Is that did I get it correct?
Yep,
Randy?
correct.
See, you helped me understand that. So Randy is going to heads up a project called Broadband Planning Toolkits, and he's going to kind of give us an overview of what they're doing. And talking about mapping. So anyway, go on, Randy.
Good. No, thank you, Steve. Yeah, and this I think dovetails with the as one discussion as well. So I'm, you know, usually I spend a big chunk of time going through toolkits, and so I'm going to, you know, compress this into things that are very succinct. I guess one way to describe what we do is maybe in contrasting it to a lot of other things that are done in the geospatial arena. and you have GIS stuff that's done by almost every city. Engineering firms do it. States have a lot of content on their website, and as BEAD goes on, it gets richer and deeper. And of course, you've got sites like AS1 that have just a lot of resource. What we have done is taken a slightly different approach in developing what we call toolkits, which are sort of shrink wrapped software products, and typically, and they're focused on broadband planning, but they're very specific. Like some are general, others are if you're doing a fiber deployment, you'll dive in sort of ad nauseum. And what makes them maybe a little bit different as an approach is there are oftentimes hundreds of layers of visualized data within a toolkit. They're national in scope. So, if you are interested in an island territory, you've got all the data on that. If you're interested in, any state in the US, you've got that. When you purchase it, comes with gigabytes of curated data. So it'll maybe expand to 10 or 20 gigabytes on your drive, but it's got all this stuff resides locally. You can also select areas and export the data. The toolkit is extensible, where if you have proprietary data sets, you can add those. And it's also modular, where we've got different tool sets that you can use in combination. And so just think about who uses it. They're designed so that you can have a first-time user who, if you scroll and zoom and click, and read, detailed PDFs, you're good to go. You can also, someone who's a more either spends a lot of time or brings either typically a finance or engineering background, will be exporting data to spreadsheets, running geospatial filters, doing math between levels, and doing really a comprehensive planning process. So these are all possible with the toolkits. And just to say a little bit about some of the things that are there, and these have all been developed over a period of years. But by the way, so the National Hex Toolkit has multiple technologies, basically everything relevant to fixed broadband planning and BEAD. It's got lots of demographics. It has basically a lot of the dimensionality of the regulatory frameworks laid out. The Fiber Strategy Toolkit and Fiber Strategy Pro are laser focused on fiber, and for instance, they allow they do things like road length calculations. So if you're trying to come up with a fiber build plan for a city, you can do that. They're exhaustive in their competitive information. And then we launched something in December called the Digital Equity Toolkit. And if you're doing anything in the world of digital equity, it has hundreds of data sets of hyper-local data. And I'll say a little bit more about that momentarily. And these are just some super quick screenshots. Like here, this shows sort of 100, 120 kind of BEAD compliant coverage. These are unserved and underserved locations that look like dust particles, but as you zoom in, there's tons of detail. This is an overlay of different technologies where you've got BEAD, cable, DSL, and fixed wireless. This graphic down in the lower left is something that shows the depth of fiber coverage. So this is a statistical characterization. This little graphic shows you can drill down in the Fiber Strategy Toolkit and see every individual location, what's happening there. And then this is a piece from the Digital Equity Toolkit. And just to give you an example of sort of the user experience, like here you start with put almost a satellite view, and then you zoom in, and then here are the unserved and underserved, and you can toggle on, lots of different, permutations of this, and different types of math. You can also do things like there's the 80% rule under under the NOFO, and states are using this or not in different ways, but that's part of the formula. And then this is an example here of something that's it's actually a good example of the one of the more sophisticated usage. If someone is a private equity investor, oftentimes they'll come and they'll say, I have $100 million. I'm trying to deploy it in sort of high value geographic areas. And so what they would tend to do is say, let's look for areas that don't have existing fiber. Let's look at the economics of deployment. So in this model here, it's done a road length calculation of every road in the United States, and it also knows the demographic densities based on locations and units, and so it's basically calculating a cost per passing, but it's doing it very accurately because it's measured and calculated all of this data. So you can zoom in from a national level and kind of find where really compelling deployment opportunities exist. And this is an example of such a screen. This is another example where we're showing sort of the quality of a fiber deployment. Like here, we're looking at gigabit symmetrical residential, which is a set of definitions. And the color code and the numbers show the percentage of locations that are deployed to meet that performance criteria. And so this is an area that with one type of map, you might think, oh, you have fiber everywhere. But actually, in the purple area, it's very minimally deployed. They've barely gotten started. So this is an example as you dig in. In the digital equity toolkit, there are all sorts of stuff related to the digital equity grant program. Extensive demographics, extensive income data, things like information on housing structures. Like a lot of people are interested in meeting the needs of high density housing. Sort of ad nauseum data on race and ethnicity, and then this is just an example. If you're looking for specific people groups, like let's supposing you wanted to put together a digital navigator program for Latvian immigrants, for English learners, you could find out exactly where they live because that's part of the data set. And also this tool is we call it the Digital Equity Toolkit, and it kind of came out when when that program when the Digital Equity Act launched. It's also phenomenal for a chief revenue officer of an ISP, looking at adoption and stuff like that. And then just a few other things, like we've got a soil toolkit. We're working with the USDA on that, and we have and it's got if you're looking at buried fiber within a state, we can characterize the whole state. And then also we have a toolkit with wireless, and this is an interesting example where we've got T-Mobile coverage of 5G and 4G, and the layers are color coded, and we've juxtaposed their fixed broadband offerings on top of it. And you can actually see that one relates to the other because they're leveraging the same physical network. So that's a lot on tools. And just one thing that I mentioned to Steve too is where some people think, oh, this is amazing, but I don't want to use a piece of software. So part of what we're also doing is we're working with a not-for-profit that does a lot of work with communities on in just a lot of areas, not just broadband, but other areas. And so we've picked a little town in the middle of Mississippi that with a few hundred people, and done about 100-page piece of analytics on all of the things related to broadband, and what strategies they should employ, and if they do a fiber build, what it'll cost, and so forth. And so we've put that together as a publicly presentable piece. So this is something if tools and this kind of analytics is interesting to people, we could do a program and do that. That would probably be about a 90-minute presentation because there's just a lot of depth there. So anyway, I'm going to pause there because that's an earful. But just to see if there's any questions, and then Steve asked for just some thoughts on policy things, so I've got a few slides on that as well.
Any questions for Randy before we move on? Going once.
So I did I did just a quick jump over to the website really quickly. And so these are little packets of data sets that you guys sell. These aren't, right?
Not data sets. They're complete. They're top to bottom tools. You download it. It's a user interface, and it also has gigabytes of data as well.
Yeah, so
So
I
each
looked at
tool
the
may have
digital
a couple
equity
hundred data
toolkit,
sets.
the
Yeah,
digital equity toolkit, and that was like
yeah,
1,700, like $2,000.
right,
And
right.
so you're saying that you purchase that, it's a full platform to do whatever with regards to the data that's aggregated and to manage through it.
That's right. Yeah. So you could run do
Okay,
digital equity analytics in your city or your state or whatever. Yeah. So yeah.
thanks.
And we heavily support customers as well, and also, even like if you're not sure if you want to buy anything, that like these come with huge depth of documentation, like they're 30-40 page things that go through use cases, so that's a very worthwhile read if you're interested in the space, and you can just download that and it's there on the website.
Thank you.
Good.
So Randy, if we had an organization that here in Arizona that wanted to purchase your toolkit and then make it available to everybody in the state, can they do that?
That could be done. Yeah. In fact, we're encouraging states to do that. And so the answer, like in an ideal world, the FCC would say, here's a little bit of funding, and we'd make it available for free to everyone in the country. But we can definitely do that on a state by state basis. And we're have been trying to encourage broadband offices to do something like that. We can and what we would probably do is just customize it so that it's just for the state. But we can definitely do that.
Okay. So Randy, you want to go on a little bit and just talk about some of the policy issues?
You bet, you bet. So this I'm gonna have keep pretty brief, and I have maybe a couple pages on just uh, sort of policy frameworks, and then things that I've seen in the news that I think are noteworthy. So one of the really interesting things I think is just the states that have actually completed their subgrantee selection, and which is and have released it, Nevada, Delaware, and Louisiana. And I think that they are all have done a really nice job, but they're very, very different. And so they are reflective of sort of the diversity that you get when you empower states and say, here's what you can work with. And so Nevada, I think, is particularly interesting. If someone is fiber forward, that they're actually do a phenomenal job there. Like they have awarded grants up to 77,000 per location for fiber. So they've invested very deeply there. At the same time, and they have I think around somewhere like 80% or so of locations that are fiber covered. But they also, interestingly, have done a lot with satellite. So they have done a contract, or they've done an award to Kuiper, but they have awarded 78.4 of their geographic areas, which they called RPAs, to satellite. So they're a tiny percentage of the locations, but it's a lot of the geographic area. So if someone is an alternative technology fan, they're a great example there too. So they've actually done a lot to optimize, and they have, and I think Arizona, someone mentioned, has 67 project areas. They have approximately 800. I've don't have the number right in front of me, but it's a small and very granular. Um, Delaware had basically two big incumbents and gave 100% of their award to those incumbents, so Verizon and Comcast. And what's interesting is they got those incumbents to pay three-quarters of the cost. So that was a phenomenal outcome, but with a very different objective. And then Louisiana, somewhere in between there, about 95% fiber, I believe. And and what's interesting is the demographics of the West, like Nevada or Arizona, is very different than the demographics of Louisiana, and sort of the decisions are reflective of that. The other thing I thought was interesting to note is just I pulled a page out of the alternative technology roadmap that the NTIA published a month or two ago, and of course this is probably likely to change under the new administration, but this is an interesting framework, and it goes from priority broadband service, aka fiber, to reliable broadband, which is their four categories of technology, to unlicensed fixed wireless, and then to alternative technologies, which is where satellite is allowed. So it's a very prescriptive things that has a very kind of small role for satellite, so people who worry about satellite capacity won't it's not an issue under this framework, although this framework's probably not likely to last either. But some of the things that jumped out there is there's just some big complications in terms of how you attribute costs to satellite. And so there are a lot of concepts like reserving capacity. And so things that, I think, and things that are buried in the footnotes of the guidance that just raise hornets' nests of questions. So anyway, that can be a point. And then this is something that I just wanted to show as one slide. There are several organizations, and we're one of them, and this is something I put together that have done this is a sensitivity analysis of the extremely high cost per location threshold. So, and this is a study, if you just run it across, this is the lower 48 states. It comes out with a cost of 15 to 20K, where you basically use up all your BEAD budget but don't exceed it. And a lot of states have not sort of articulated a number for that threshold. Louisiana gave a number of 100,000, which is super high, and you need to double BEAD if that were applied elsewhere. But anyway, this is an important framework. And then this is just a few things that have sort of hit me in the recent weeks in terms of events and things that are sort of worth discussing. And some of the topics that emerge are technology preferences and environmental rules, and sort of how BEAD gets changed or altered in the new administration is, I think, the big question. That's it.
Any questions for Randy? Going once, going twice. Okay, let's move on then. So quickly, Mala, do you have any updates that you want to share?
I'll be very, very brief. E-rate deadline is next week. It's March 26th at 9 o'clock our time. Category 1 and Category 2. Category 2 is internal connections, and this is the fifth and final year that this is being offered in this cycle. We really don't know with the new administration how Category 2 would be addressed in the next 5-year cycle. So if anyone wants to apply, please do so this year to upgrade your internal connections, Wi-Fi, access points, and those kind of things, hubs, routers, switches, those kind of things. It's based on square footage for libraries, and it is based on student counts for schools. More information on my website, my webpage, azlibrary.gov/E-rate. You will see all the contracts summarized there. There are state master contracts and the Mojave educational contracts, which can be taken advantage of. So you don't have to do your own RFP. You really can't do your own RFP now because the deadline to do your own RFP passed on February 26th. The funding cap, however, that's good news. That has increased due to inflation to 5.06 billion. This is a 2.4% inflation adjustment, and welcome, because if you need to apply for higher bandwidth, this is a good opportunity to do so. One of the things that I really wanted us to note is that FCC's chairman, Brendan Carr, can you hear some disturbance in the background? Is someone
Is that
not
you, Michael?
muted? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Sorry, that was me muting now.
Thank you. Thank you. Just wanted to mention that FCC Chairman Brendan Carr last week launched a fast track massive deregulation initiative. It's called Delete, Delete, Delete initiative. And this initiative is to re-examine every single FCC rule regarding broadband regulations, guidance documents, etc., and identify rules to be modified or deleted. And there's a public notice to that effect, asking for cost and benefit, relevance to these rules. They're also looking at marketplace technology changes that are likely, that can be identified to make these changes. So the fact that it's named Delete, Delete, Delete really, shows what this initiative is all about. I didn't note down the deadline for providing comments, but I think you should be able to Google FCC delete, 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 and find it. Okay. The cybersecurity pilot program application window is open. There have been 707 applicants selected for the first round. I mean, round one is actually those who have been selected out of all the applicants to go on to the next phase of a more detailed application. We do have some from Arizona, 2 libraries, particularly 2 counties, Yuma and Yavapai, and a few schools as well, school districts that have been selected pre-selected among the 707 applicants nationwide. Let me see if there's anything else I mentioned about the NTIA change of guard. Shelby, that is schools, health, libraries, broadband, also had a change of guard very recently. Joseph Wender is the new executive director, effective from March 10th. He takes the place of John Windhausen. I will, after I finish talking, put some really interesting recordings, links to the recordings that Shelby has done webinars on. And one of them is the Supreme Court and USF, the Universal Service Fund, What's at Stake. They did have a webinar recently, and the recordings can be viewed for free without being a member of Shelby for 30 days. After that, unless you're a Shelby member, you will not be able to see it. So I'll put the links in the chat and also send it to you, Steve, so you can post it. Other pending legislation that we are keeping an eye on, again, is Eyes on Board Act. It hasn't gone to the Senate floor yet. This is part of the Kids Off Social Media Act, led by Senator Schatz. And the worrying thing about it is that they've linked it to the E-rate funding for schools. They've said that if the schools and school districts do not block social media on devices that are loaned to the students, whether they are Chromebooks or hotspots or whatever, they should be blocked. If they're not blocked, then they are likely to forego E-rate funding. So that's a little worrisome. And the hotspot lending is still a hot topic for discussion. It hasn't come up. It's a CRA that they're planning to bring up, Congressional Resolution Act, Review Act, that is, that if it comes to the floor and if it gets voted on, then it cannot be overturned in the future. So that's another thing that we really worrying. That's worrisome. I don't think I have anything else, Steve, unless there are questions for me.
Okay, any questions for Mawa? Okay, if not, I'm going to take just a minute here to share, and we're about done. We're about out of time here, but just want to touch on a couple of things real quickly. Um, Again, March 26th, the Supreme Court will hear arguments on the Universal Service Fund and whether or not it's constitutional. Missed it yesterday, but I think it will be available. Shelby hosted a webinar yesterday, and the link should be available, and I'll be sharing that out. And they did a webinar on the Supreme Court Universal Service, what's at stake. So it's a really important issue, and we'll of course continue to provide updates as that happens.
Steve, it's in the chat. Sorry,
Yeah.
Steve, it's in the chat now.
Okay, thank you, Mala. And then next is just a reminder that May 20 through 22 NDIA Net Inclusion Conference will be here in Arizona. I encourage you all to try to attend that event. It'll be at the Gila River Indian Community. And so we encourage you to participate in that. And then Kelly Mukherjee, you want to just talk briefly about the super meeting that the Digital Inclusion Network is going to be hosting?
Sure, I wasn't prepared for it, so sorry, I might not have great details right now. But yes, we are inviting everyone in Arizona to come together to our super meeting. Steve, I don't know if you have the flyer. Maybe I can
I do.
Okay, so
I do, and
maybe
I will share that
in your newsletter, then you'll have the latest details. But yes, we invite you to the super meeting right before net inclusion. And Steve has the information right here I see on the screen on the 19th from 2 to 5. So please come. I think we plan on having some discussions so that we can start working together and just really practice working as one.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Michael, Kendall, are you still online?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. So, Michael, I'm sorry, we're almost out of time, but do you have any quick updates from the Department of Education?
No, sir. Just in general, I would say business as usual. We have seen a recent uptick in funding requests. As people are hustling to get to make their deadlines. But other than that, really nothing significant to update folks on.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. So are there any other announcements or anything that people want to share? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording, and